Good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar. Good afternoon. So we still have a few people joining. We are going to give them a minute or two to get settled before starting the session. Thank you. I think in 1 minute we will start the event. Welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. Perfect. I see people is still logging in. Welcome. Okay, I think we can start the session of today. Well, first of all, good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar. Thank you for being here today. My name is Tabata Bourgois. I am business developer at DDR, Drug Development and Regulation. Before starting this session, I would like to cover a few housekeeping topics. First of all, this session is being recorded and we will disseminate it. Also, the support is available upon request. This presentation is in no way binding to any agency or regulatory body. If you have any question for our speakers, please use the question tab on the right panel of your screen. Questions are anonymous and will be addressed during the second part of the session. We invite you to ask your question as soon as possible so that your team can treat them before the Q&A session. Also, on the right panel of your screen, you have a chat box where you can send us a message if you have any issue with your audio or video. We also prepared a few polls on the right panel of your screen, and we kindly ask you to answer this poll during the session. Thank you for your collaboration and understanding. So welcome to our webinar, Development and Regulation of Medical Device Software under the MDR. This session is a collaboration between CN Group and Drug Development and Regulation. I would like to thank our speakers to be here today, to be here with us, and I would like to introduce them to you. So our first speaker, Milan Piskla, is a technology director in CN Group for electronics, CAD, C++, and .NET. His background is microelectronics. He has been in IT for more than 20 years. Together with his team, they are developing custom solutions in various domains, including IoT, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and healthcare. Our second speaker,
hello everybody.
Sorry. Our second speaker, Andrea Larrañaga, is a biomedical engineer, and she has a specific experience in medical device design. After graduating, she oriented her career to medical device regulation, and she is now regulatory manager at Drug Development and Regulation. Welcome, Andrea. And
hi, everyone.
Hi, Andrea. And our third speaker, Laura, is a biologist with a broad experience in research and development of medical devices. She has been involved in registration processes of several devices under the old directive and new regulation. She is currently working as a regulatory officer at DDR, Drug Development and Regulation.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Laura. Thank you for being here. So I will kindly ask Milan to introduce CN Group to you.
Okay, so CN Group was founded by Danish investors in Prague in 1994, and we were recently acquired by the company Cyclum, headquartered in the UK. We combine the Scandinavian management style with the highly technically skilled people in Czech Republic, Slovak Republic, and Romania. And for over 27 years, we have been providing high-quality software development, mechanical and electrical design engineering, and consultancy services, mainly for customers in DACH region and Scandinavia. Yeah, so that's about CN Group.
Thank you, Milan. Regarding DDR, drug development and regulation, we are a consulting firm based in Barcelona, London, and Amsterdam, offering services in the field of regulatory development. We cover drug, medical devices, and in vitro diagnostic development, both in Europe and United States. Our expertise encompasses the entire product development from the very beginning, early stage, quality CMC, non-clinical, clinical, and registration of products. Thank you for being here. Today, our first speaker, Andrea, will cover the regulatory consideration you should have in mind when developing a medical device software under the new regulation. Then, Milan will talk about the development process of the medical device software. Then, Milan and Laura will cover two case studies, one being the medical image analyzer and the second one a spirometer. We will shortly conclude before going for a short Q&A session. Please ask your question before the Q&A session. And now I will hand the floor over to Andrea. I wish you a pleasant webinar.
Thank you, Tabata, for introducing me and for all the introduction. As she said, my name is Andrea Larrañaga, and I'm going to be talking about general regulatory considerations regarding medical device softwares. First of all, I would like to introduce the medical device definition. And according to the MDR, a medical device is an instrument, apparatus, appliance, software, implant, reagent, or material that can diagnose, prevent, monitor, predict, prognose, treat, or alleviate a disease, injury, disability, or pathological process, or physiological. As you can notice in this definition, the term software is specifically mentioned, and this is a change from the previous directive. As you can imagine, this supposes a big difference, because now we have to really talk about software, and it's included in the regulation. If we now talk specifically about medical device software, it can be defined as a software that is intended to be used as a medical device, as per the definition that I already said. There are different types of medical device softwares. They can be independent, the ones that, for example, run in a mobile phone, or they can be driving or influencing the use of a device. In this square here, I noted the key concepts in order to define if our software is a medical device software or if it's just a health software, for example. First of all, as I already said, it has to have a medical intended purpose. The second point, it would be that it has to benefit individual patients. And the third point is that it has to process, analyze, and create some information. It has to do some action on the data. If the app is only storing data, that would not be considered a medical device software. For understanding these concepts better, we have a little example. So if we had a diabetes app and somebody asked us if this is a medical device software, what would you say? If somebody came to me with this question, I would say that I need more information in order to determine if our software is a medical device software or not. That's why we have two different scenarios. In the first scenario, we have a diabetes app in which the patient can log the glucose levels, monitor carbohydrate intake, log the medication doses. It also teaches some preventive exercises, and they can set glucose medication reminders. If I saw this scenario, I would determine that this is not a medical device software, because this app is just storing data and is not doing anything else with that. However, if we had this second scenario in which the app is exactly the same, but it uses artificial intelligence in order to forecast blood glucose levels, here we can see that the app is doing some action on the data, is using something and creating some new output that the patient is going to use. Therefore, we can determine that this is a medical device software and it will be regulated by the MDR, the Medical Device Regulation. I hope this example helped you understand better the concept of medical device software and the difference between that and a health software. And if we continue now with the classification, the medical device software is classified the same as medical devices. There are 4 different categories, the class 1, class 2A, class 2B, and class 3. And the category increases as the risk increases. So if the risk of our medical device software is low, it's going to be classified as a class 1. And however, if the risk is high, it's going to be classified as a class 3. Here again, we have different kind of softwares, the ones that drive or influence the use of a device and the ones that are independent. And according to this, we are going to be classifying it differently. So if our medical device software is driving or influencing a device, the class of this medical device software is going to be the same as the device. However, if the software is independent, it's going to be classified in its own right. If we continue talking about classification, we have to mention the rule 11, which is the specific rule related to software in the MDR. So this rule states that if we have a medical device software used for making decisions, it can be diagnostic or therapeutic decisions, the classification would be 2A. However, if this decision can lead to death or irreversible deterioration, it will be classified as class 3. And class 3. And if this decision can lead to serious deterioration or surgical intervention, it would be classified as class 2B. If we have a medical device software that monitors physiological processes, it would be classified as 2A. But if this leads to immediate danger of the patient, it will be classified as class 2B. And the rest of the softwares are classified as class 1. Here, it's important to take into account the factor of the time or the influence the time has. And I'm going to explain this better. So if we have a short-term disease and we are going to make a decision with our medical device software according to in this disease, the impact this decision has is more critical because this decision can lead to death, for example, in a few hours or in a day. However, if we have a long-term disease, the decision made by our software is not going to be definitive, is not going to be critical or as critical because the physician is going to have time for evaluating other factors. Therefore, the classification of our medical device software would be lower. Last note about classification, it would be that if there are different rules that apply to our medical device software, we are going to be we have to choose the rule that gives us the highest classification. Yeah, that's it about classification. So if we now continue about talking about technical documentation, once we know that our medical device software has to be regulated by the MDR and the classification, we also know that we are going to be compiling a technical documentation. The technical documentation is a document or a group of documents that give all the information of the medical device software. This dossier is usually handed to a notified body, and the notified body assesses all the information and decides whether our medical device software can get the CE mark or not. As we can see, this technical documentation has also a post-market surveillance part, and this means that it has to be constantly updated. So once we hand in the technical documentation to the notified body, we have to, like, our work doesn't finish. We have to keep updating it until the device is out of the market. So during the whole life cycle. Here I would like to specifically mention the subsection called General Safety and Performance Requirements, because these are the requirements that we have to fulfill in order to specify or prove that we are complying with the MDR. There are several ways of doing this, but one of the most common ones is using standards. There are a lot of standards, and here there is just a list of a few standards that are usually used in medical device softwares. For example, we have the Quality Management System standard, the one specific for medical devices, the Risk Management Standard, the ISO 14971, that is the one specific for risk management in medical devices. We can also see the ones related to software lifecycle. Here, these two ones, we are going to be talking about them a bit later, and I'm going to explain when these standards apply. We also have the usability standard, and in this last square or section, where we can see two topics that are quite new: cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. Cybersecurity, in these last years, the importance of this, the focus has been set on cybersecurity, and the importance is growing. And artificial intelligence is a quite new technology in which there is no specific regulation, but the regulation is being developed. So in this webinar, we are not going to be covering these two topics, but it's important to keep them in mind. As I mentioned before, and now I'm going to talk a bit more about the specific medical device software standards, and I'm going to explain when do they apply on the different cases. So if we have a health software, or if we have a software that is part of a health hardware, for example, well, first of all, I'm going to be defining the different kind of softwares, and then I'm going to be classifying or explaining which ones fall under the regulation and which ones do not fall. So I'm going to, so there are 4 different categories. The first one is the one that covers softwares as part of health softwares. For example, softwares in gym equipment. The second group would be softwares as part of a medical device. For example, the software used on a MRI machine. The third group would be software that is a health software and is running on a general computing platform. For example, the diabetes app that was not using artificial intelligence. And the last group, it would be softwares running on a general computing platform, for example, a mobile phone, but that is considered a medical device software. So the first software standard, the IEC 82304, would cover the softwares related to general computing platforms, both the health and the medical device softwares. However, the IEC 62304 would cover only the ones related to medical device softwares, both the ones that are running on medical devices and the ones that are running on computing platforms. As we can see, health software that is running in a specific hardware is not covered by these standards. But if we have medical device software, we are going to have to consider both standards. We are not going to be talking more specifically about these standards, but if you are developing a medical device software, I really encourage you to check these 2 standards. And for my side, this is all. And now I'm going to introduce Milan. Well, Milan is going to continue talking about medical device software development processes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andrea. Now, I would like to elaborate on the development processes and technologies that we utilize while developing medical device software. So in contrast to traditional waterfall models, we prefer an agile approach. The main difference to waterfall is the development is done in short iterations, typically 2 or 3 weeks. After each iteration, the development team presents the working prototype to the customer, represented usually by the product owner. The biggest advantage of this approach is a frequent feedback from the customer back to the development team, and thus we can ensure the product meets the customer expectations at the end. Based on our experience, we recommend applying also the kickoff face-to-face meeting before the start of the project for better understanding the requirements. We also recommend regularly daily Scrum meetings, then retrospective meetings after each iteration, and the iteration planning meeting before the next iteration. And what is really crucial, we insist on dedicated product owner here. You might ask whether it's possible to do the agile development while still being compatible with IEC 62304. Yes, it's feasible when we meet the requirements specified in that IEC, and especially documentation and verification of all activities. And the second, no ad hoc design decisions with respect to software architecture. For the documentation and verification, we recommend do it in every sprint, but that of course requires highly trained team and efficient document approvals. Otherwise, the effort would be really multiplied by a number of sprints, and that would be not bearable. And to avoid ad hoc design decisions, we recommend to define the higher level of the architecture upfront at the beginning of the product, and then revise a software architecture iteratively in each sprint. Now, I would like to explain a little bit an interesting technique that is one of our best practice that helps designing the user interfaces. So maybe you already experienced an issue when the final product wasn't accepted well by the end users. So this design sprint technique is actually for this purpose. And it is a 5-phase exercise which uses design thinking to reduce the risks in successfully bringing products into market. It is actually a very strict 5-day schedule which guides you from simple mind maps and sketches through prototype to testing and feedback from the real users. We have a dedicated user experience team that is able to facilitate the design sprint even remotely. As a side effect of this technique, it helps our customers to better define requirements or user stories for the product backlog. Now, I would like to elaborate more on the testing. Testing is an essential part of the quality assurance. And for the testing, we recommend to follow a V model. The V model means that on the right side, you see the activities on the testing side, while on the left side are corresponding activities on the development side. IEC 62304 defines 4 test levels. The first, unit, component, or class test. Then the second, integration. Third, system testing. And the fourth, software validation, sometimes called acceptance testing. We added actually one more level to the bottom, and that's the code review. That's really one of our best experiences and lessons learned. So every piece of code that gets into production needs to be really peer reviewed by the senior member of the team. Now let's talk about the technologies or development roles that are involved in development processes. As we are the company developing not only the software development, we have also engineers for mechanical design, electronics, hardware in general, for embedded software, cloud developers, and also web and mobile developers. And together, those roles can develop really very complex IoT devices, and those include even artificial intelligence parts. So let's talk about them a little bit later. Andrea already mentioned artificial intelligence. You might hear about AI and machine learning, but in general, people are still confused about these terms. Thus, let me please explain them in more details here. Artificial intelligence is a broad term, and it's actually a technique to mimic human behavior, like sensing, reasoning, acting, or adapting. The machine learning is just a subset of the artificial intelligence. And this technique is about creating algorithms with the ability to learn. And that typically uses neural networks. Then you might heard also about deep learning. Deep learning is again a subset of machine learning, and it's a subfield which deals again with the neural networks, but typically these neural networks are orders of magnitude more complex than the ones used in just a traditional machine learning. Okay, so let's compare traditional programming with the artificial intelligence approach, in particular with machine learning. Machine learning is actually trained system rather than explicitly programmed. So the classical programming uses the algorithms that input the rules and data, and the output are the answers for a particular problem. For machine learning, the paradigm is completely reversed. The input to machine learning algorithm is data, similar to programming, but we also feed this algorithm with known answers, and the machine learning algorithm actually creates the rules, and based on those rules, we can decide and classify various entities. Now, we would like to explain two cases that might appear in medical development. And first of them, it's a medical image analyzer. Yeah, it's just a purely software project, and the customer wants us to develop the image analyzer for DICOM images, and that software should be able to detect anomalies using the artificial intelligence / machine learning algorithms. The requirement from the client is that the application needs to be running on the tablets as well on the PCs. And the cloud is required for the data storage. Please note, again, as we mentioned on the previous slides, AI needs to be trained for such anomalies detection, which usually requires really a huge number of existing examples properly labeled. Huge number means that we really need hundreds of thousands of such images with properly labeled anomalies. The system then learns accordingly, and then it can classify the new images based on the learned rules. For those of you who are interested in more technical details about the technology stack, we usually recommend for such applications using React.js, JavaScript framework for the user interface part, and .NET or Java for the server side. In this case, we selected a .NET technology backed up by Microsoft, and then also corresponding Azure cloud service. Now let's talk about the regulatory considerations for this kind of application. Laura, if I may ask you.
Sorry. Hello, thank you, Milan, for the explanation of this first example. It will be very useful to understand how the final intended use of the software affects its classification. My name is Laura, and like Tabata indicated before, I work as regulatory officer at DDR. Now, returning to the example that Milan explained, this software can be considered as standalone software. It means that it can operate independently from other hardware or software. The general intended use of the software explained is to detect physical anomalies of patients. It could help also to diagnose, either directly giving the diagnosis itself or indirectly helping the doctor to diagnose the disease. This general intended use is not enough to properly classify the device. Regarding MDR, in general terms, all devices that serve to diagnose or that help to take therapeutic decisions are classified as class 2A, like Andrea mentioned it above. Also, to classify properly this software medical device, it is necessary to solve this following question. What happens if there is a software error? If a software error can cause a wrong diagnosis that leads to the death or an irreversible deterioration of the patient's state of health, the software should be classified as class 3. For example, it will be the case of a software intended to diagnose one stroke. In that case, a software error can lead to the patient's death in a few minutes. Also, there are other cases that the diagnosed error can cause a deterioration of the person's state of health or a surgery. In this case, the device will be classified as class 2B. It will be the case of a medical image analyzer of bone fractures, for example. If a rib fracture is not well diagnosed, it could lead to a lung damage, for example. The final intended use of the device determines its classification and all the regulatory requirements needed to put it on the market. Now Milan will explain another example.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. So let's look at the second example. It's a spirometer. So in contrast to the previous example, now customer wants us to develop not only the software, but also the hardware, electronics, mechanical design. So the requirement is that Bluetooth sensors with airflow sensing send data about airflow measurement to mobile application. The user can then read the spirometry data on the mobile phone. For the technology stack, we utilized C language for the sensor development, and for the mobile application development, we used the programming language called Kotlin and C++. So for this case, there might be another issues coming. You might remember on previous slides when we talked about the iterative development, that after each iteration, we want to present some working prototype to our customers. But now we have not only software developers, we have also mechanical design engineers, we have electronic engineers, we have also cloud and mobile application developers. So biggest issue here is the synchronization of those iterations. And at the end of such iteration, we can then again present the working prototypes to our customers. Now I would like to ask again Laura to explain the regulatory considerations for this kind of example.
Thank you, Milan, again. This example will be very helpful to differentiate a software when a software is considered a medical device software or not. In this case, the software acts always with another device, the spirometer. It's not a standalone software. It needs a specific device to do this function. What can help us to know if this software is a medical software or not? If it only stores data from measurements without performing any other activity with the data, it is not covered by the MDR. Or in another case, if it drives or influences the use of the spirometer, acting as a firmware, it is not a medical device software, but is covered by the MDR because it's needed for the use of the device. Also, in other case, if it performs actions different from storage, archival, or communication that benefits individual patients, it is considered a medical device software. An example will be if the software makes graphic or another action on the data that helps to better understand the results to the user. It's important to know if your software is a medical device software or not to take the precise decisions needed to put the device on the market. Sorry. And the conclusions, by the regulatory side, it's important to understand that the intended use will determine if your product is a medical software or not, and its classification. The correct classification is important to ensure compliance with the MDR and to have access to the market. And it's important also to establish first a strong strategy before moving development forward.
Okay, and for the technical part, the conclusions, we can use agile development methodologies and still being compatible with IEC 62304. And at the same time, this will bring a benefit of faster development and less risk of providing the proper product to the customer. Second, the design sprint is a recommended efficient exercise for designing the user interfaces. And the third, applying artificial intelligence and machine learning is typically used for the approach when there is no analytical solution applicable. Yes, so we are looking forward to the questions.
Okay, thank you very much to you, to Milan, to Laura and Andrea for the nice explanation. I hope it is more clear for all our attendees. I would like to ask you to answer the polls that are in the panel on the right side of your screen. It will help us to improve the quality of our workshop. And we will start the Q&A session. My first question, well, from the attendees, is for the DDR team. And the question is, can you come with an example of a class 1 software, class 1 medical device software?
Yes, so class 1 medical device software, for example, it would be some kind of software used for rehabilitation. If the software is oriented to a specific pathology, the intended use would be to rehabilitate a patient according to that pathology, and in that case, this software it would be classified as class 1.
Okay, thank you. Yep. The second question is for CN Group. The question is, if the project is a combination of electronics, firmware, CAD, cloud development, which process or model do you use to organize the project teams?
Thank you for this question. As you saw on the previous slides, we prefer agile approach, and in particular, our best practice is to use Scrum, even for such combination of mechanical design, electronics, cloud development, etc. It is really more demanding on the synchronization, but it's still working, and we still recommend doing this Scrum or Kanban or similar iterative approach for development.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
My next question is for DDR. Someone is asking, how can I be sure that my device is a medical device software and not an in vitro diagnostics software?
In this case, if the software applies to in vitro diagnosis, it will be a in vitro device software. And if the software applies to a medical device, it will be a medical device software itself.
Okay.
When the sample comes for the patient, it's outside the patient, it's an in vitro diagnostic. And if the device acts on the patient, it's a medical device.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Laura. My next question for CN Group is regarding how you organize your projects. So to make the project organization work from both sides, team clients, what is necessary from the customer side?
Thank you for that question. We always emphasize having a so-called product owner role. So it's a role on the customer side who has a clear vision of the product, so he can explain the goals to the development team. So not just the technical details, but also high-level vision. And this person also needs to be able to make decisions. So not just answering the questions, but really doing the decisions. And what is important to say that this role could be, in most cases, full-time role. So the customers need to be aware they need to allocate such product owner for 100% capacity for the project. So that's one of the key factors.
Perfect, thank you.
Welcome.
Another one for DDR. Do you know if all notified bodies, so the organism for the registration of medical device, if all the notified bodies can register medical device software in Europe, or only a few of them?
Thank you for the question. So no, not all the notified bodies can evaluate softwares. The notified bodies have been certified for evaluating a specific product or a specific product ranges. So you have to choose a notified body that is certified for evaluating medical device, softwares in general. And this information can be found on the European Commission web, in which you can see a list of notified bodies and the product ranges the specific topics they have been or they can certify.
Thank you very much. The next question is for CN Group. So artificial intelligence, always. Have you worked on a project where artificial intelligence or machine learning is actually used?
Yes, again, thank you here. So in the past, it was a kind of chicken-egg problem in our company. In the past, we didn't have experience. At the same time, customers asked for the reference here, but we finally got into that area, I think 3 years ago. And now we have several projects involving machine learning part. Mostly it's about deep learning using TensorFlow frameworks for this kind of deep learning. And even some of those projects are in medical domain. So yes, we have the real projects involving the AI machine learning already.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
My next question is, well, in general term, we talk about the CE mark from a regulatory perspective to commercialize the products in Europe, but someone asked if there are other requirements than this CE mark in certain countries in Europe to commercialize the products.
Thank you, Tabata. Yes, in some countries, also a national regulation, a national law could be applied, and you have to review in each country if you need more requirements that has to be compliant apart from the CE mark.
Okay, great. One question is for DDR again, and is how can I be sure that my software is a medical device?
So, well, I think we covered this topic during the presentation. So the most important thing is to first fulfill the definition of medical device, that it can be found like more complete or more detailed in the MDR. And then there are also some guidelines by the medical device coordination group that we can use for understanding better if we have a medical device or not, that are quite helpful. But in the end, it's just to apply the definition and to make sure that it's covered by it. And then we have to, again, determine, as we explained during the webinar, if the software is also considered a medical device software or if it's just a health software.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for the answer. So for CN Group, it's a question regarding design sprint, and someone is asking, did I understand correctly that all participants must be present at the design sprint for all 5 days?
Yes, thank you. That's definitely strongly recommended that people really attend that 5 days exercise. Of course, there might be some compromises. That some people might attend just the first 3 days during certain sessions and not to attend the other ones. But during those sessions, there is really a strict requirement not to do any emailing, chatting, or taking phones. It's really exhausting time, but it pays off. So we strongly recommend really fully focusing the whole 5 days on the design sprint.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For DDR, we talk a lot about, it's true that we talk a lot about hardware and software, and someone asked if you can provide more information about the classification of the firmware.
Yes, so in the end, the firmware, we can say that it's a software that is running a medical device. So as we saw on the specific case of the spirometry, I would say, if the firmware is just running the device and is not doing any action on the data, we can say that it's not classified as a medical device software. However, it's still part of the device, and it can be considered as another part or as an accessory to the medical device, and that's why it's also covered by the MDR. So in any case, even if it's not specifically defined as a medical device software, we have to apply the regulation, and we have to we encourage to use the standards that we mentioned during the webinar for being able to comply with it.
Okay, thank you very much. For CN Group, I have the same person asking if they heard well the information, but is it possible to participate in the design sprint remotely?
Yes, it is possible, and actually we learned that a lot during the last year, during the lockdowns, that we developed those techniques that we can handle them successfully also remotely. So yes, it's possible.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Another question for you, and for DDR. How long does it take to register a medical device software?
The time will be variable, but you can take into consideration only for the registration purpose at minimum 6 months, because for the audits and all the things needed to obtain the CE mark, without taking into account the development itself, that it depends on the device.
6 months from the moment you give the file, the technical documentation to the notified body.
And the audits and all these things, yes.
Okay, and everybody I've heard about the delay due to the new medical device regulation. Can you comment on this?
Sorry, the delay.
The delay from notified bodies to accept the new technical documentation from new
because
consoles.
There's a lot of companies that want to register the products under MDR, and there are the notified bodies are now there are a lot of notified bodies that can make the assessment, but it's recommended that the companies start to move all the things, to contact to the notified body and start with the assessment of the technical documentation as soon as possible in order to make it more quickly, in the more quickly way.
Perfect, thank you. Let me see. And one last question for DDR. Is artificial intelligence covered by the medical device regulation?
So, well, this is a difficult topic, because if the software that has been developed it has a medical intended purpose, yes, is covered by the MDR, but it's not a usual or a common software, because well, artificial intelligence is going to keep updating the software, and we are not able to assess, or a software cannot be assessed if it is continuously updating. So what manufacturers should do in this case is to separate or first train the software and get a stable software, and once that software doesn't have to change again, evaluate it and certify it. And if we want to keep using artificial intelligence for updating and for improving the software, it has to be out of the market. And once the updates have been done, this software has to be updated again, because the changes in the software are major. So yes, if it has a medical intended purpose, is covered by the MDR, but the conditions are not the same as a usual or a common software, we can say.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Andrea. And I see that we are running out of time, so we will take a last question for CN Group, which is a company that don't have a partner to create the outer body of the device. Do you have the ability to create a physical 3D model prototype?
Thank you for that question. Yes, we can cover it. So we have ability to do, for example, 3D prints. But if really the real prototype, functional prototype is required, we have sub-suppliers that we have very strict NDAs with them, and they are inside the Schengen territory. So we can organize the delivery of such prototypes through those partners. And we have done that already several times, so don't hesitate to contact us for that. Thank you very much for that.
Yes, we would like to invite you to contact either our partners in Group, either DDR, depending on the type of solution you are looking for. We will be really happy to answer your question and to help you during the device development. Even if at the beginning you are not sure if your device is a medical device software, is a medical device, is a software or anything, you can just ask and we will be really happy to schedule a short meeting with you in order to check if your device falls under the MDR scope. I would like to thank again a lot our speaker. I would like to thank you, all of you, for being here today and for asking interesting questions. This presentation will be available upon request. We will upload the replay of this webinar on our channel, on our website. And if you have any question or any doubt, you can just send us a message and we will be really happy to answer your question. So thank you, Milan, Laura, and Andrea for today's webinar.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Attending.
Thank you.
And we hope to hear from you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.